Hey guys, so I am here in the church I grew up in, and today we are going to be chatting with my mom. You're going to find out why they called me Mini-Wynne, which is her name, when I was growing up and I worked around the funeral home with her. And you're going to, I think, see a lot of similarities between us. So, she's laughing at me. So stick with us and we're going to have a conversation with my mom.
I started in nursing with the nursing home. Worked for my mom. She was nursing director of a nursing home. And I worked as an aide before I went to school to get my nursing license. And then I worked at the hospital and labor and delivery, OB department. And I worked there for a number of years. From there, I worked in pediatrics in intensive care unit at our city hospital in St. Paul, Minnesota. To keep with nursing, when my children were older, I went to pediatric nursing, worked in a pediatric office, and during that time in the pediatric office, we had a number of our children that had chronic illnesses, and a number of them came to the end of their illness, and I was working with a family closely that they had two sons with the same disease. And when I met with them, and their first one died, they were quite upset, and the next one was failing, and they did not want a medical examiner to come to the home. They wanted our pediatric doctor. And so I worked with them, talked with our doctors in the office, and I was on call for her when the end life came, that I would be with them at the end time, and that when it was time for somebody to pronounce them, I would call our doctor and he came out. I sat and worked with them. We read the father held him. I can see him to this day. Read the book, Oh, the Places You'll Go. And the doctor came. When the funeral home came, they saw that what I was doing with helping this family. And then at the funeral home, I was there with them at the funeral home for visitation, and at the funeral, and the funeral director approached me to do an aftercare program for them that they had been thinking about doing and hadn't really put it into practice. The wife of one of the funeral directors was sort of doing it. And so I said, sure, sounded like something I'd be interested in. And so I worked for the funeral home for, I think, 10 years. From working at the funeral home for all those years, I was asked through Tomorrow's Child, Michigan SIDS, to come work for them in the Kalamazoo County, and followed up with parents that had infants that had died. And I followed up with any parent in Kalamazoo County that had an infant die. And a number of them had no money, place for burial, and that's when I went back to the funeral home and said, we need to provide a grave, that it could be a common grave, that all these babies could be buried at. Went to Campbell Murch Memorial. They donated a memorial, and I said it had to be upright so it could be visible, an upright heart, and it says forever in our hearts. And a number of those babies were buried in that common burial spot for a place where the families could go, because so many had no money. They were just young people, no jobs, and so forth. So we needed to provide that. And I did that for a number of years. From there, I retired. Yes, I was on the Kalamazoo County Death Review Board, where we reviewed any child's death in Kalamazoo County. I did do the county response team, and we trained police officers and first responders of how to respond when they go to the house and there's the death of a child. And I don't know much except Grandpa Rockstraw was my grandpa, and he had a funeral home. I never knew of the funeral home. I do have the glass front that was in the front of their house. The funeral home was in their house. My dad went into funeral service, and he worked, I don't know if he worked for them or not, but he was in funeral service before he went into the service. When he got out of the service, he went back to funeral service, funeral home, and funeral homes were different than he said to me. I remember him telling me that they wanted him jumping around to different funeral homes, and he just didn't care for it. So that's when he took another job. So in brief, my grandfather was in funeral service that I know of just because of some histories we found, and the stained glass window I still have his name and the address of the funeral home. And then my dad was in funeral home service for a number of years, but after the service he took another job somewhere else.
So what do you remember, because I was 16 when I started working at the funeral home, so what do you remember about when I was young, working at the funeral home? I think parents pay more attention than we realize they're paying attention to us. Do you remember?
Oh, well, I remember when you wanted a job, and I was working at the funeral home and said, why don't you just come and work visitations, that you greeted families at the door, you did the office work. What I remember about you personally?
Well, do you remember it being a thing for me? Or was it just I went off to my little job? Do you remember seeing anything or thinking?
Oh, I could see in you, you have a love for people. You greet people, you're friendly with people, you love talking to people, and as people came in, you gravitated to that. I could tell. You did more than just say hello at the door with people. Yes, you were a very people person. You did more than just a job. Yes, definitely.
Did you think I would do that one day, or did you ever think or consider that?
I don't think I did because there was pieces still missing from what you were doing. I don't think you knew the whole realm of what funeral service was at that time. I remember the day that, I think it was your junior year, that you said, you wanted to be an epidemiologist, mm-hmm. and you said, I just don't want to go the extra 4 or 6, whatever longer. You didn't want to do that. And
I failed biology. We'll mention that.
I didn't know that, but that's okay. And and I think I did say to you, have you ever thought of funeral service? And she says, well, you said, I don't know, I've never seen a person just come in before they were dressed, casketed, and ready for viewing. And so I talked with the funeral director, and we said, well, we're going to get her to do that. And I remember the day I got to one of the funeral homes, because I worked for 3 funeral homes, and they said, we've got a call, they're coming in, find Kari, because you were at one of the other funeral homes. And I called you and I said, get up here. And I waited till you came, because I was about ready to leave. And I talked to the funeral director that was going to prepare the body, and I left you. And yes, I remember when you came home.
We can't cry alone, so if one of us starts, it's downhill.
When you came home, you said, Mom, do you realize what they do? I said, yes, dear, I know what they've done. I saw it. But I did say you will finish your senior year, because you will get your bachelor's in psychology. Yeah. And I said, then you can go on. So I said, you're not stopping right now. You're going to finish at Albion and then go on. So, and I'm glad you did.
So at this point in my career, I've cared for several family members. I've cared for people from our church from growing up, community members, people that we know and we've loved. Did you foresee that I would be able to do that part? Because not everybody can do that as a funeral director.
Oh, yes. Knowing you'd want nobody else doing it.
Control freak.
You're like your mother.
Is there anybody, has there been times you're like, I wish Kari could have taken care of this person? Has there been
Absolutely.
any
Yes.
specific?
No.
Do you want me to take care of you?
I don't know. I don't know, and I won't care, so.
No, you won't be here. So I think to give a little treat, since you're sharing, we need a good Kari story that you share about me. Either a good moment, a good, whether as a funeral director maybe, or do you remember anything like me at the funeral home, something about me?
We're too much the same. Kari and I our demeanor, our short-tempered,
Or stubbornness?
stubbornness. We both are always right, even though I am.
Or generosity?
She's giving. Yet we are too much the same. We are, I mean, working, when we worked together, she was mini-Wynne. They called her mini-Wynne. You know, we're find mini-Wynne somewhere because we're too much the same. I think people that work with us and see us together will realize that. We just did something the other day, at Kari, my granddaughter's open house, and one of Kari's friends was there with us in the hall, and I turned and made a comment, and she got laughing. She says, "Oh, Kari, it is exactly what you would have done. It's exactly what you have said," and she said it exactly the way you would have said it. So when we're together, people see.
I don't know why I'm crying.
What question are you going to ask?
Just that. I just foresee you crying, and so I start crying.
I haven't cried yet.
I know.
We will drop whatever we're doing and go help someone at a drop of a hat without any questions answered. I think either one of us would do that.
Almost to a fault.
Yes. And I think our families know that, but I think sometimes it gets in the way of families.
It does.
But I think her heart is big 1 minute, and then it's closed tight the next. No, I'm proud of her. I'm proud of all my kids. They're all different, but they have similarities. But Kari is me.
So I just want to thank my mom for sharing a little about me and her and my history kind of in the business, so you get a little more glimpse of kind of how I ended up where I am right now in the business as a funeral director. So thanks guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye.